Hi, what's up? This build is called Overload Bomber and it's an elementalist which is a combination of earth and storm mastery. The build has very high damage at mid-range and is actually quite overpowered. Diving right in, we start with the pros and cons. The Overload Bomber has high damage from all ranges, but it is the strongest at mid to close range. We got good mobility with the storm skills. As for the cons, the build requires some setup to work. We need the right skills and some right items. We are an overload build, but what even is that? Overload is an interesting mechanic. Many spells of Earth and Storm have overload modifiers, which enhance the spell's damage, but we take some damage ourselves in return. Energy spent will increase our overload stack, and we take lightning and fire damage for each stack. So let's take a look at our main skill, Roiling Magma. For a high energy cost, we fire a lava ball that explodes and deals fire damage in an area. We max out overload, obviously. That modifier says refund 50% of energy spent over 1 second and gain 1 overload per 30 energy spent. That means that we get back some energy and we get a bunch of overload stacks upon a Roiling Magma cast. Also max out the grandeur modifier. That one deals 128% of the energy spent as extra fire damage. It also increases the cost of Roiling Magma for 20% of our current energy. This modifier basically increases our cost, but also boosts the spell's damage. Put the remaining modifier points into enhanced damage, so that we get a 40% boost. With that configuration, we maxed out our damage and energy spending for our main spell. Our complementary spell, Flame Volley, synergizes insanely good with that. Flame Volley works like this. We use the orbit modifier so that Flame Volley is a fireball above our head that automatically shoots enemies in mid-range. How much damage is dealt and how fast the ball shoots is determined by our Amplify stack. We gain Amplify for energy spent. We are spending a lot of energy, so our Amplify meter goes through the roof. Use 4 out of 5 for the modifier Enhanced Amplify. That one increases our Amplify cap. Also use 4 out of 5 for Amplified damage. That one increases the damage by 5% per Amplify stack. That means, just by shooting some lava balls, we have the fireball above our head deal super high damage all by itself. Flame Volley is a good source of continuous damage to finish off targets that survived the first Roiling Magma. DPS upwards of 30k is nothing unusual with this spell, and that one is just our complementary spell. So the damage with this build is absolutely huge. The spell that goes well with Flame Volley is Ignite. This one has a neat modifier called Flame Volley Trigger, which is just that. It adds a 15% chance for Flame Volley to cast Ignite. We max out Ignite's modifier Resistance Reduction to reduce the enemy's resistance by 20%, which is good against stronger enemies or bosses. Using Overload is eating us alive if we don't use abilities to mitigate the self-damage that we inflict to ourselves. There's also the problem of energy regeneration. We need a lot of that, otherwise the build won't have any energy. Roiling Magma with our energy hungry modifiers also has a high energy consumption. On tier 3 we have the passive Overheat, which increases the damage to our overload abilities. Use the feat Energy to recover some energy whenever overload is generated, and also fire damage to increase our fire damage by 2% per overload. We often have 30 overload, so that feat alone increases our overall damage by 60%. That is insane. Storm Mastery has a counterpart passive doing the same thing called Overcharge. Maxed out, this one increases our overload damage by 55%. Use the feat Duration to take 15% less overload damage. The duration doesn't actually matter because we spam Roiling Magma all the time anyway. The feat Energy doesn't even do anything for us. The passive gives us a good damage increase and some nice self-damage mitigation. To have a good energy regeneration early on, our masteries are perfect for that with their tier 1 passives. Put 4 points in Arcane Abundance and use the feat Regen. That one regenerates 1% of our energy pool per second. Max out Storm's Arcane Influx and use the feats Energy Regeneration and Energy. Earth has a defensive passive called Magma Shell. Skill that up to level 6 in order to be able to use the feat Overload. This lets us take 10% less damage from Overload. Storm has the counterpart for that with Storm Adaptation. This one also has the Overload feat, but it also gives a 20% lightning resistance. Overload damage is fire and lightning, so the damage gets reduced. Another important spell is one of our auras, Earth Enchantment. This one boosts our damage and gives some resistances for our overload damage. The Storm counterpart, Storm Nimbus, serves the same purpose. Put a few points in lightning resistance. Later I leveled up Conservation for both auras, because it's better to have a lot of energy at our disposal. Now we go into all the passives that boost our damage. First up, there's Grand Magic with the feats Critical Chance and Spell Damage and Cost. This gives our spell a crit chance, increases their damage by 82% in total, and makes spells cost 10% more, which is great for this build. Raging Mind is skilled up to 6, just to get the feat Critical Chance. Another big boost is Earth Attunement with the feats Area and Spell. That increases our overall damage for all fire spells by 77%. Another active spell that synergizes well with everything else is Ring of Flame. During earlier levels, we use it as a movement spell. Max out Overload and Weakening Heat. Later we also skill Permanency to have this spell always active. We do that once we reach tier 4 of Storm Mastery, because we get Tempest. Just 1 point in enhanced critical hits is enough. To get around the map faster and blink towards enemies, also use Blink with Repeat. This build also uses a lot of active abilities, so we also max out Lightning Evoker. This gives a chance of 45% to have an automated lightning strike cast on a random enemy in a 12-meter radius. Use damage and shock feats. On tier 4 there's also Lightning Bringer. Put some points in it too to have a lightning strike cast on almost every active skill. Dodge, barriers, blinks, etc. count too. Also put 1 point in the Storm Nimbus aura Thunderstorm to cast more lightning strikes. I put also 4 points in Combustion, use the feat Chance, and also 1 point in Cremation. We don't really need those, but sometimes it triggers. Let's talk about attribute point distribution. Since we deal mostly fire damage, but also some lightning damage, we have to focus on knowledge. Also use some points in vigor, because the build needs to get close a lot in order for Flame Volley to reach the targets. The ratio should be 4:1, anything else is just greedy. A very important part of this build are items. We need to have some very specific gear. We want all the health and energy regeneration that we can get. A perfect piece for the build is the epic necklace called Wellspring. I recommend that you gamble for it. Wellspring gives us a huge health regeneration, also good energy regen and also lightning and fire resistance. Our helmet needs resistances and energy regen. Our chest armor needs resistances and health regen. For the rings, go for fire and or lightning resistance, crit chance, spell damage and fire damage. Arms need resistances and fire damage. The boots need resistances and movement speed. The shoulders need resistances and crit chance. I use 2 epic items here, a spear and a shield. The Cuttlebone Standard is a nice item from Tactic Burst 1. Real veterans know that one. Here it boosts our damage, gives energy regen and cast speed when generating overload. When using a spear, we can also use a shield, and what better one to use than Moon Disc. It gives free barrier, energy regen, cast speed and most important of all, movement speed. It is not necessary to have this spear and shield. You can also use a staff that has spell damage, percent fire damage, crit chance and energy regen. For the health potion, take the highest health regen that you can get. Same goes for energy potions. With that we maxed out our regeneration and damage. But how to get there? With that we come to the strategy part. During the earlier levels you can just skill Roiling Magma and Grandeur to really deal lots of damage. Focus early on energy regen passives and prioritize health and energy regen items. The build really takes off when you got both masteries to tier 3 because of the overload passives. You actually go tier 4 with Storm Mastery first because of the important movement spells. Prioritize everything related to overload and later on skill some complementary stuff like Ring of Flame and the Lightning Strike passives. Let's talk about the playstyle. The build takes a lot of self damage even with all the regen items and all the damage mitigation through skills. Use the barrier frequently, not only when we expect some incoming damage from enemies. The barrier shields us from overload damage as well. Use dodges and later blinks to reposition yourself. Shoot dangerous enemies like the exploding spiders from afar. With normal enemies and bosses you can get close and personal. The build likes to fight at mid-range because Flame Volley has a limited range. Volley deals a huge amount of damage and actually almost deals half of our damage. The build is insanely powerful, but that power comes with a cost. You need to stay out of harm's way, because the self damage alone can be enough to bring your HP down. Use health and energy potions frequently. This playstyle is not for everyone, but I like the high action route. Building the character is definitely for advanced players, so I don't recommend it if you are new to the game. During the earlier levels the build definitely struggles a bit with health and energy regen. Sometimes you need to step aside and stop firing for a bit, because you either run out of health or energy. Once you got both masteries to tier 3, the build really takes off. On max level it blows up everything. Let's have a look at how it looks in action. Oh, and by the way, thanks for watching, like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.
room for that.